welcome everybody, and sorry for the short delay.
Yes, hello everyone, welcome. We are thrilled to have you here with us this evening. I'm Sadie and I manage community and PR here at Tomorrow Bio. Of course, joining me tonight is Dr. Emil Kenziora, CEO and founder of Tomorrow Bio.
Or just Emil. Of course, everybody knows me from the other webinars that we've done over the last couple of weeks and months. We're going to do more of these webinars going forward, like with different topics ranging from logistics to science to how we do things and how our procedures work. And of course, today it is about funding. And Sadie will start, and then I will go on. All of you, of course, have seen, as always, we have a Q&A part at the end of the couple of slides. So feel free to ask all your questions, ideally as related to the topic, please. All the other topics that sometimes people ask questions about gonna come up in future webinars and future presentations. And if we're running out of time, we're gonna prioritize those questions that are more related to the topic.
Yep. So as Emil said, we are here tonight to introduce a slightly different side of our organization. We planned making sense of cryopreservation to be sort of financial advisory assistance to help you understand that you can make accessible cryopreservation a reality. And we believe that everyone, not just the wealthy, deserve to take control of their future. So we'll be sharing some insights that myself, Emil, and our team have compiled through working with members of all income levels. And we've helped people gain access to cryopreservation even though they don't have the financial means to pay for the numbers that you see on our website. But a lot of people, yourselves included, probably didn't know that that's something that you can do. So tonight, we would like to frame our strategic advice around this one idea. If you are in our community, we want to support you. So yeah, from there, we can go ahead and discuss the different aspects of what we'll be seeing tonight. In order for you to understand the strategies properly, we need to imbue you lovely people with some topic-appropriate financial literacy on the subject of how our funding works. It has come to our attention many times that the standard international cryopreservation funding model can seem quite abstract, to say the least. So we're going to clear the smoke for you by explaining which models work and how, if you don't have money to become a member yet, we'll help you understand why signing up now is actually the most cost-efficient option for you in the long term. If you don't know what being a member even means, we're going to cover our model and why it works for you from A to Z. We'll talk about the best insurance options you can obtain as a financially aware member with us, which kinds of insurance will be able to support you best, and how it can help you afford the procedure in the long term. Then we'll show you how members can afford cryopreservation for as little as possible. Lastly, we're going to go over some solutions that we found to cases where people might not have had so much money, but were still able to get them the procedure. So these case-specific examples will help you visualize which of the membership strategies will work best for you. At the very end of the night, we hope that you'll feel comfortable reaching out to us personally to talk about how we can make this a reality for you.
Yeah, let's talk about how the parts of the membership actually work and how the pricing combines.
Yeah, so a lot of people have written to us to ask if they have to pay monthly, if they have to be a member, and if they have to have insurance. And our usual answer is you don't have to, but why would you want to forego all of those things? It's actually way cheaper to be a member and pay on a monthly or yearly basis than to pay the entire cost up front. Our structure works like this. So once a month, we ask you to pay a total fee. The fee encompasses both being a member and the payment toward your long-term insurance, which we choose to keep separate to be as transparent and hyper-specific to the needs of the individual as possible. So these two factors, the membership fee and the insurance fee, are both numbers that we are open and dedicated to fine-tuning to the needs of every member as much as possible. And it's for that reason why we separate the two. It might seem confusing, but it's actually to your benefit that the two things are both adjustable to your situation. However, we've also often received questions saying that it's difficult to understand what membership actually covers and why it's separate from insurance. So we'll take a closer look at that now and how it factors into the monthly total. So as you know, cryopreservation is not exactly a normal product. We are one of a handful of companies that offer the service worldwide. And so for that reason, being a part of our community is really important, and being a member is becoming a part of it. Beyond this structural concept driving membership, the practical benefits are really immense. Becoming a member with us allows us to provide you with experienced legal counsel, for example, for navigating cryopreservation in different territories and to be able to do so successfully. It also ensures that we'll be able to keep you in our records as actively registered for our network and fast response SST teams. Membership also includes covering a custom dispatch strategy that we design for your location, as long as it's in one of our included areas, of course. And being a member is significantly cheaper than a one-time last-minute payment for cryopreservation, as I've already mentioned. In this sense, it's an automatic discount. So being a member secures you included discounted rates on transport and storage to our facility, and it also covers R&D financing for the future. This ensures that you won't be cryopreserved with the same technology of 50 years ago, because no one wants that. And being a member is the best way to be able to ensure the best quality of your cryopreservation for the price. So with you in our system, we'll be able to get you faster and more comprehensively when you're with us. This is separate from insurance. What monthly insurance costs is the second aspect. It is the comprehensive cost of the cryopreservation procedure itself, which is extremely extensive, time-consuming, and highly technical. It's also carried out over the course of multiple days for full completion and accurate monitoring. It covers however many years of continued storage and maintenance in Switzerland we need before presumed arrival or the chance of revival. Right. Yeah, and this ongoing effort is necessary to ensure your physical form is maintained to the best quality current science is available to offer. So this insurance obviously covers multiple aspects. It's basically an investment in world-leading cryopreservation quality, which is absolutely not something to miss out on just because you aren't sure which insurance is the best option for you or you feel apprehensive about taking out a plan. So we've already identified the key insurance pathways for financially aware potential members, but want to provide a comprehensive overview of the flexible options that we offer just so you can get an idea before we continue with the specifics.
Right. So most of you, of course, who engage with us know most of the funding options that exist for insurance. And not only for insurance, but how to pay for the cryopreservation in general. So most members, I think, that are signed up with us have some type of insurance. So there's either term insurance, right, where you're being covered for a period of time. It's relatively inexpensive, but it requires that you do a medical examination or at least fill a medical questionnaire. And then in quotation marks, the downside of it is that it has an end date, but it's an easy way to get into it. Then there's universal index life insurance or whole life insurance in countries where this universal index life doesn't exist. That's basically a savings plan. It's basically a savings plan with a payout option to a third party, which in this case would be us. And then, of course, there's other options of how you can pay. One would be prepaying, right? There's so-called payable on death accounts, right? Which is basically a bank account that says, if someone dies, then that bank account would pay out to us. All of these options work. The easiest, especially if we're talking about people who might not be that wealthy, that's what this webinar, of course, today is about. For most of everybody who wants to put funding in place right now, it would probably be term life insurance. And one way of how this could work and we're happy to discuss with you one-on-one, is not taking term life insurance that has a long coverage period, which of course generally is always very recommendable. But if this makes it too expensive, then one way would be, once you become a member with us, you take shorter term life insurance, let's say for 10 years or so. And then fingers crossed, in 10 years, either our prices would already be lower, or at the same time, hopefully you at that point would have more money. The second option that you just saw on the screen would be this kind of universal index life, or universal index life is only available in some countries, most prominently in the US. In other countries, that would be called whole life insurance, which is pretty much a savings plan. It's a savings plan where you put money in on a monthly basis. That money is invested by the insurance in a stock market or equivalent, financial instruments. And then down the line, hopefully not anytime soon, but in 30 years, in 40 years, whenever you get old, that money would have accumulated with compounding interest and compounding returns enough so that there is enough money. And usually these things can sometimes be combined with some with an instrument that also covers you for the short term when you sign up. In whole life, which is mostly the option available in European countries, that kind of early coverage would not exist. So basically consider this just as a complete overview, this universal index life or whole life insurance, mostly for people who are trying to figure out how they can afford cryopreservation in the first place. These are usually not great options to start with. But of course, the details might differ, so reach out to us and discuss. What's very important to us is, of course, to have people be able to become members in the first place. Forget all the long-term funding. How can you even become a member if you really, if money is really tight? So for that, as Sadie said in the introduction, we always try to make it work. And this is kind of the general concept behind Tomorrow Bio, in the first place. It of course applies to, we try to make it work wherever you might die. Of course, it's perfect if you're close by and close to the facility and so on. But even if you die on some island under, difficult circumstances, we still make it work. And that same kind of concept applies to membership pricing as well. So we have this concept for members, what we call means-tested pricing. Could you go back to the means-tested pricing real quick to the slide so that we stay there for a couple of seconds? So this means-tested pricing, the idea behind it is that if someone says the standard membership fee that Tomorrow Bio currently charges on a monthly basis, which is 50 euros or $55 per month, I just can't afford it. I would love to be cryopreserved. I would love to have, have a contract, but 55 or 50 euros is just not something I can pay. In that case, if you reach out to us, right, and we might ask you to, kind of provide proof for that, we're willing to go down to even €1 per month, right? You become a member with us, you do sign up, you're a full member in good standing, but for as long as it needs to be the case, you basically just pay €1 a month. And what I mean by as long as it needs to be the case, of course, we would first of all, do it on a handshake basis. And again, we might also ask once in a while, every 2 years for proof that it's still currently not financially possible for you to pay. So let's say you're a student or, life hit you hard or whatever it is, membership, we would be always willing to reduce as much as necessary to be able so that you can sign up. Now, being a member, and could you go back to the fallback option real quick?
Yes.
Being a member, of course, does not mean much if you don't have the funds to be even cryopreserved, right? Because being a member is nice and great, but now if the time comes and cryopreservation is in fact necessary, in that case, of course, somehow this cryopreservation needs to be paid for. Some of you might still remember that, in the early days of Tomorrow, I think the first 2 years or so, we only offered whole body cryopreservation. And whole body cryopreservation, since you need to store the whole body in the dewars, it's unfortunately always very expensive. It will get more affordable down the line, but today it is unfortunately very expensive. Initially, we added brain-only preservation to at least move it a bit more into the affordable range, right? And now we have a current price for brain-only preservation of 75,000 euros. Now, let's assume you sign up and, even 75,000, you cannot imagine that you will be able to pay this even down the line, In those cases, and we had these cases, so this is not some purely theoretical discussion, but every year or so, there's not many, but maybe 1 or 2, depends on the year, there are these cases where people want to be cryopreserved, and even that money is unfortunately not possible. So Tomorrow Bio has this policy that if you are a member with us, right, and of course this does not apply to members who just signed up yesterday, right? Of course, we don't want that this can be abused. But if you have been a member for us for many years, and then the time comes, and unfortunately you have some terminal condition, but you don't have the money. Again, in a means-tested way, we might ask for proof that this is in fact the case, that you cannot afford it. We still try to make these cryopreservations work, right? Meaning the quality might go down, right? So as a disclaimer, we would strongly not recommend to rely on that. It will not be the same quality likely of a cryopreservation where we have the full amount of funding that we require. But we would still see if either we can do it partially pro bono, if we can do it a bit slower, but we can still do it. Historically, once in a while, there were third-party donors that were willing to fund cryopreservation procedures for people who cannot afford it, and so on. Long story short, if you're a member with us, we do everything that you're being cryopreserved, at least somehow. Meaning we might not be able to do everything that we normally do, but of course cryopreservation in general is always there to just increase your chances that you're around in the future, right? And of course, a great cryopreservation and a not good cryopreservation, there's a difference, but currently at least no one is able to specifically calculate how much lower the chance in that case is. So now, if you want to run through, so basically to quickly summarize, right? So membership we can reduce tremendously, and we're willing to do so. Just so if anybody is in the audience here who has not signed up with us yet, and where money is tight right now for whatever reason, then for membership, reach out to us. We're happy to reduce it to very small amounts, and then you reach out to us, or we're going to ask you once in a while. And if times get easier, we're going to increase the membership. It doesn't even need to be like the full jump to 50 euros a month. It can be, let's increase it to 10 euros a month once that's possible, right? That's on membership. And then on cryopreservation cost, basically the same process or the same logic applies. We try to make it work. Now let's talk about a few cases, right? Cases where in the past this has happened. So, and just like we go through them, and I in general just talk about like how this works, right? There's always different cases. Either, you're young, you in theory can get insurance, but for whatever reason, it's just not possible for you to pay for insurance, right? Let's say you're a student, you don't have any income yet, for example, right? There can also be cases where, you might even be able to pay the membership, or you're not, but at least you cannot get insurance, right? You might be, you might have had a cancer, had cancer in the recent past, or some other medical condition that just, doesn't allow you to get at least not term insurance, right? Because insurance companies would just reject you. So same story, right? We might be willing to go down very low with the membership, and when I say might, I mean we are very low. We are willing to go very low, and then for the cryopreservation cost itself, we'll try to make, or we do everything that to make it work. In fact, of our members, of people who wanted to be cryopreserved, there has never been a member that has died that was not cryopreserved because of cost. And I think we differ there to other organizations. I think for other organizations, I don't want to speak for them, so they might have like programs as well. But for us, the logic is, even if, let's say the very simple case can be that in the future, because of crazy inflation or whatever, the minimum of cryopreservation is higher. For new people who sign up, we have this process that if you have a contract with us, we guarantee that price, except for some inflation adjustment. And the reason for that is, I think it's an absolute nightmare if, down the line, you say, hey, listen, you had a cryopreservation contract with us for 20 years, and now the cost is higher now, and now you can't get cryopreserved. The cost might, sorry, the quality of cryopreservation might not be, the very best, but at least you get cryopreserved. So all of these things are kind of like, tools that we try to employ, and again, they're not to be abused, right? So we're going to make sure that this is being used for people who actually do need it. But whatever is possible, we try to make it work. So this QR code that you currently see on the screen is to schedule a consultation with us. So for all of those of you who have wanted to sign up for cryopreservation, but it just, it was never financially possible, just have a talk with us, right? We're more than happy to chat. We're more than happy to figure this out for both factors, membership and how to pay actually for your cryopreservation itself. And then, hope to welcome you as a member, and then hope to not welcome you as a patient that gets cryopreserved for a very long time. But if need be, then we would do it. So, the high level art or the high level concept here is, if you're a member with us, we'll make it work. And now, without further ado, I think we answer some questions.
Yep.
As always, these questions are on Slido. So if you have a questions that you want to have answered, put the answer in Slido. And if you see a question that someone else has asked that you feel like is a great question, feel free to up and downvote it. We're going to answer questions as long as the webinar goes, and if there's more, we'll try to even go over time a bit. So let's do that without any further ado. All right, first question with the most votes right now is: once become a Tomorrow Bio member, are you hedged, protected against any future price rise? Mostly yes. So there's two parts, right? So membership might go up. So as some of you might remember, we had 25 euro membership in the past, and then we increased it to 50 euros to have more money for R&D. All the people who had old contracts, their membership did not increase. So membership pricing does not increase with us. So once you signed up, you always have that membership price, except for inflation adjustment. We've never done any inflation adjustment so far, but if there's like higher amounts of inflation, then we might need to do that. Otherwise, there's no increase in price. Second point, of course, is cryopreservation. So there's two reasons why the cost of cryopreservation might go up. And then there are some reasons why the cost of cryopreservation might also go down. The reasons for going up would be also inflation, right? Most people who sign up for cryopreservation, of course, sign up somewhere between 30 or end 20s to early 40s. So hopefully they don't need to be cryopreserved for at least 40 to 50 years. Now in that time period, of course, there will, even if there's not crazy amounts of inflation, there will definitely be a good amount of inflation. So the cost would, probably the cryopreservation minimums in the future would be higher. But if you have an old contract, that has any, let's say the 200K sticker price, then we would still honor this, but the quality might go down, right? We might not be able to use the new technology that we have, and that might be more expensive. But at least you always have a downside protection kind of thing to fall back on. And the second reason I already briefly mentioned would be new technology. There could be new cryopreservation technology, better cryoprotective agents, better, you name it, that might just be more expensive. In those cases, we would always have them as an option. And then if you have the funding, you can, in quotation marks, upgrade to the more pricey and higher quality option. But your old contract would still always stay in place and would not be changed. And then hopefully, and of course this is why we're here, would be to bring the price of cryopreservation down. That can either happen because mostly it will probably happen because hopefully in the future more people sign up to be cryopreserved. And of course, this is one of the core things that Tomorrow Bio is working on. All right, that was a bit elaborate, so I'm trying to answer questions a bit faster to not go too much over time. All right, for an older person who is already uninsurable, I think that the best option is to pay full amount when the patient is ready. Is this correct? So it is still the best plan to sign up with us. So all of these kind of, goodwill things, and we do means tested and we try to make it work, those only apply if you've been a member with us for a long time. And long time in this case definitely means like years, right? So this does not work if you just sign up and you kind of try to max optimize it. And at some point you're 85 and you sign up last minute and then you say, hey, I don't have the money, means tested pricing, please, and so on. So membership still makes sense to do early, and then the rest of the amount, probably it does make sense if you're not insurable. And when we say not insurable, that always means not insurable with term life insurance, because whole life insurance, you're always insurable. It's basically a savings plan. You put your money into an account and that account is then invested and paid out, or like a payable on death account. So if that's a specific and concrete example, feel free to reach out and we discuss this in detail, how we would recommend to make this work. How much does it cost for my brain to be cryopreserved? That's a quick answer. So that would be 75,000 currently, including all the SST and field cryoprotection. Again, it can be cheaper if need be.
And just to interject, yeah, I mean, I think that it can be really helpful to think of these numbers as things that can potentially cost around the same price in a month as your daily cup of coffee.
Well, the 75K, no, but the membership, yes.
Well, not all at once, no. But the combined aspect of the membership and the insurance together, this is something that can be broken down over time. So it's important to rationalize it over a period of many, many years instead of like, wow, 75K today, okay. Yeah, anyway, please continue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. For a case in a few weeks, can the full amount be paid now in advance and wait until needed? Absolutely. So if there's a case that is coming up where we know that this is coming up or the patient knows that it's coming up, for example, there's a terminal condition where the doctors say the person is going to die in a couple of months or in a year or so, the money can definitely be paid upfront. If the patient is not preserved, how can the money be recovered? So we would just wire it back. So let's say someone, there is a patient where the doctors believe that person is, might have another 6 months, right? The patient decides that they want to be cryopreserved. They wire the money to us just to be safe, be sure. And then for whatever reason, the patient decides that they don't want to be cryopreserved anymore, right? Or whatever else happens. In that case, the money would just be wired back. But if we have already sent the team, right, then our cost would be deducted from that amount. That's basically the logic. Hi, Emil and all the team. I'm a Swiss member. The European life insurance doesn't work for us Swiss citizens. Any news on that topics? Unfortunately, no. The problem is this is a Swiss law. So it's not like we don't want to do Switzerland. In fact, of course, we have our facility in Switzerland, so we definitely want to do Switzerland. But it's a Swiss law that Swiss citizens are not allowed to have foreign life insurance companies, life insurances. So from our side, there's unfortunately not much to do there. We do know some Swiss insurances, though, that have in the past worked with Swiss citizens without any issues. So if you're currently still looking for life insurance, just reach out to our support team at support@tomorrow.bio. They're more than happy to point you to the right contracts. Hello, I'm 56 and I live in Italy. What is the best insurance solution for me? So if you're 56 and relatively healthy, then term life insurance or whole life insurance would both work. So you could have a term life insurance contract for, let's say, for example, 20 or 30 years, right? The price, of course, if you're 56 would be a bit higher, but still manageable. And then now, let's say you would choose the 20-year option. Now we have 20 years to bring the cost of cryopreservation down, at least with the current quality level. And you would have another 20 years to, if you're 56, arguably you're probably still working, you would be able to accumulate more personal net worth to, maybe then pay out of pocket, or combine it with a whole life insurance or payable on death account. So there's a couple of options. Probably, without knowing more, probably starting with term life insurance for a period of time would be the best thing. Or starting in Italy, I think that would probably be the best way. Will there be a separate storage tank for men and women if and when cryonics becomes a mainstream medical procedure? Probably not, just like there's not different operation rooms for men and women in hospitals or anything like that. So I deem that to be highly likely. I don't think so. What do you hope to accomplish in the next 10 years? A lot. So we always have these kind of three, and of course I'm answering this question kind of briefly because this is not necessarily related to this topic. So there's always these three main things that we work on. It's pushing R&D forward, how to do better cryopreservations now and how to do really good ones in the future. There's always logistics and medical and network, growing our SST network and so on. And last but not least, there's just growing the topic, communicating the topic. One thing that Sadie, for example, is doing, bringing this topic to a larger audience and so on. So all of these things, we want to be significantly better than we are. So basically, bigger, better, and faster in 10 years from now. And, down the line, we might do a webinar about, what our, kind of the vision for the next year, for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years would be. So I'm happy to elaborate there more. If you open a storage location in India sometimes, where in India would it be? I have no idea. We have not looked at India yet. Your guess is as good as mine. This is not a topic we have thought much about, so stay tuned for once we're there. Any plans to work directly with more insurance providers in Germany, the same way as you work with the current one? Tentatively, even though the insurance brokerage partnership that we have one insurance broker that we like quite a lot, and we've been working with them very extensively. There's nothing wrong with them. Everything is fine. Other insurances would be, plus minus the same. So at least it's currently not high on our priority list, but it might be something in the future. Do you know German insurance that takes non-German citizens and residents except you partner one? All contacted were not accepting. So in fact, probably no insurance ever takes insurees in other countries. The reason is because of AML and KYC regulation. So because of anti-money laundering and know your customer regulation, insurances cannot really work across borders. The reason why this works in our case is because, at least in one model that we do, the person that gets insured, that signs up with us, is not the policyholder. We are the policyholder. So basically the payment obligation is between us and the insurance company, and you would be the insured person. And that makes the AML and KYC regulation easy, because of course we're a German organization, a German company, and then the insurance is a German company, which is both them in one country. To my knowledge, this is currently the only way of how this works. Third-party insurance allows changing beneficiary at any time, immediate dispatch on accidents possible. Yes, that is in theory possible. So if someone says, I don't have, I'm not signed up yet, or I don't have insurance, but I changed the insurance, and then if there's an accident, if I'm understanding the question correctly, that would in theory be possible. But if someone is not a member with us, say we said it in the beginning, if someone is a member with us, we give a discount on the cryopreservation and SST and storage fees. In that case, we would charge more. Multisig setup. Multisig means like, for example, a crypto multisig wallet set up with trusted independent third party, like a lawyer or notary, with immediate SST dispatch before payment possible in the future. No, it would always require on the payment. So it depends a bit on the details. But in most cases, the problem is not the. I mean, it's a bit difficult in detail because we would need to verify two things. The problem is the lawyer, the notary, or whoever might have been advised the day before that they should not pay out, right? We need to also verify that the multi-sig wallet still has the funds. Of course, that we can validate because it's openly on the blockchain. It is difficult, but under certain circumstances, this might be possible. We haven't had that case. That would be a thing that we would need to individually discuss. In general, we don't recommend multi-sig setups, but we do support them. Payments through assets, through last will, possible with immediate? No, that is not possible. So the question is, let's say you have in your last will, you have a lot of assets, let's say your house or whatever. The reason why we cannot support that is because at least under most circumstances, at least we don't support it in a standard setting. We are not able to validate if the last will has not been changed. In theory, right, if you have a last will that, for example, was sent to us and to your lawyer, if you sit down at home and write a last will handwritten, at least in most countries, that last will, because it has a newer date, would supersede all prior last wills. Depends a bit on the country, but at least that would not be possible in every country. Right. Plans for Tomorrow to be a policyholder for third-party life insurance in the future. I mean, in theory, we can do this now. If someone wants to sign up and they want to use another insurance, but we should be the policyholder of that insurance, in theory, that works now. A revival Cryonics trust is not ready yet. Possibility to pay for cryo through that trust. Ability to add and remove assets house while person is alive. I'm not sure if I understand the question. So we, of course, have kind of a revival trust, which is the money that the Patient Care Foundation manages. If you want to set up your own thing, in theory, again, that's possible. The problem is always, how can we know that these assets still exist and all contracts are still in place? So that is kind of the limiting factor always. I'm skipping a few questions because whoever is named Doer has asked a lot of questions. So I want to give some other people also the opportunity to ask some questions, but I'm going to come back if we have time. What should a relatively young person, early 30s in my case, who can't get insurance due to a non-life-threatening disability do to fund cryopreservation? So in this case, we would be back to these kind of two main issues, right? On one hand, depending on how much personal income you have or net worth, you can have a reduced membership fee. So let's say now, okay, we have membership figured out. Let's say you pay €5 a month. Now, and again, like if you can't pay 5, 1 is the minimum. Let's say you can do 5. Now you're a member with us. Now the second question is, okay, if something happens to you, how would you pay for cryopreservation? And now there's a couple of options. So let's say you actually, you have a good job, your income is actually totally fine, but because of a disability, you cannot get term life insurance. You can still get whole life insurance. So you can start paying into this whole life insurance, right? And then over time, the money would accumulate so that at least there would be some, or if not enough money available to provide a cryopreservation. And again, if only some money is available, we would still try to make it work. But let's say, at the same time, you don't have much income, you don't have much net worth. In that case, if you're a member with us, maybe your situation changes in the future, and now you do have income and can get back to making this work. Maybe your disability gets better, and now you can have term life insurance, right? Term life insurance has this exclusionary period, so stuff that happened more than 10 years in the past, they don't ask anymore, it doesn't count, and so on. So there's a couple of options, and then last but not least, let's say nothing gets better, even 40 years down the line, money is still tight. Again, we would still try to make it work, and that means it could be external donors, it could be pro bono cases. Of course, it's very difficult for me to predict what might be possible 40 years down the line. The thing that I can say is that we always will try to make it work and do our very best to make it work if you've been a member with us for a good amount of time. So my long-term hope and my long-term goal is, and that's kind of the goal of the company, is that there is never a person who does not get cryopreserved even though they wanted to. So cryopreservation in a moral sense and from a long-term goal sense should purely be a personal choice. So if someone says, I want to be cryopreserved, this is my choice. I've looked at all the documentation. I know the pros and cons, and all the informed consent is done. Then there should not be any other factors or questions. It should be only reliant on that person making that choice for themselves. And even though that might not be possible for everybody right now, we're trying to get as close as possible to that as kind of our guiding principles. Next question would be, good evening, my name is Pedro. I'm new here. Can you please explain me the difference between cheaper options of whole body preservation and the original one? So there is technically no fundamental difference. Let's say you have a whole body cryopreservation contract with us. The main, or the sticker price for that is 200,000 euros. 80,000 of that is being used for the procedure, and 120,000 is being used for long-term storage. Now, let's think in a couple of price tiers, right? Let's say you signed up with us, you signed up for whole body cryopreservation, you have the 200K, okay, everything is great, we do our standard. Now let's say we go 50,000 down, you have 150,000. In that case, we would still give the 120,000 to the long-term storage, because there is no discussion about that money. That money always needs to go to the foundation for long-term storage, for whole body. And we would have 30,000 available for the procedure. So we would, for example, now not be able to do that much standby. We would try to time the procedure, tighter, meaning we cannot come like 2 weeks early, right? And doctors say, hey, the person might die in the next 2 weeks or so. We cannot send a team that then waits around. But if then we wait and then the patient or the doctor say, hey, the person might die within the next 48 or 24 hours, then we can send the team, right? Okay, let's go down another 50,000. So you only have 100,000 at the time of cryopreservation. At that point, whole body cryopreservation would not be feasible anymore, assuming that there's no third-party donors or philanthropic donations that we can use to supplement. There could be edge cases where we would be willing to, do a pro bono case, like a research case. Maybe you give us consent to try out new procedures and so on. In that case, it might be possible, but in a standard with 100,000, you cannot do whole body cryopreservation because the foundation always needs 120,000. Now, in that case, we would switch to brain-only preservation. Brain-only preservation in a standard model is 75,000. So all good, we could do a great brain-only preservation. And in fact, the preservation procedure for whole body and brain is, in our case, always the same. Just in the end, only the brain gets preserved or is being kept preserved. Now, so that would be then easy. Now let's go down another 50K. So you only have 50,000. 50,000 means for brain only, we do 15,000 for long-term storage because the brain is significantly smaller at minimum, and the rest would be used for the procedure. So same story. We might be able to not do that much standby, but we can still do it. And then once you go lower and lower, at some point, external parties, like third-party donors and philanthropic donations would need to be required and so on. But over a long stretch from those 200,000, maybe down to, 20, it's we don't need external. With 20,000, right, we would say, okay, we would try to have the brain extracted, sent to us. We would do immersion vitrification, which is significantly more affordable. And then the storage cost of 15,000 would still be available. So, of course, these are kind of the high-level guiding principles, how this might work in general, how this could work. The details of which are always individual discussions. And they're always, of course, in this case, it would be absolutely required to prove that you, in fact, don't have the means. What we do not want to do is that someone just says, listen, I don't want to pay the money. And then we kind of try, to flip over backwards to try to make it work. And in the end, it turns out that person had actually a good amount of money. Hasn't happened with us, but has happened with other organizations in the past, which of course we would not want to support. That's the summary. All right, I'm trying to find a few more questions in the last 5 minutes. With our own insurance, is SST dispatched immediately? So let's say you don't use our insurance provider that we collaborate with, that insurance broker, but you find your own insurance. All the reputable insurances in Europe and in the US we accept, and in most other countries in the world, if for whatever reason you have insurance from another country, we do accept as well. Meaning we dispatch the team as long as we can validate that the insurance contract is still in place. We dispatch immediately. So there's no waiting. Even if it allows changing the beneficiary in the insurance policy. If it's possible to change the beneficiary in that insurance policy, we would need to be able to validate that the beneficiary has not been changed. In that case, yes, we need to wait to confirm. In certain cases, let's say you've been a member with us for 40 years, we might have some goodwill here, but this, we would not accept the body for long-term storage before we are sure that the money is there. There is no other way how to do that. Because otherwise we would basically need, people, once someone is in storage, that person would never be removed for storage except for revival. So whatever we do and have in our power, we would not allow that. So even if the money is not there, we would still need to keep them in storage. So we cannot run that risk, which would basically then requires other people would need to pay for that person, which is not something that we can do. Right. So if there's more questions from people who have not asked a question, right, then feel free to send it now, right? And I'm trying to answer that question. Otherwise, I'm going with a few more from the guy called Doer, who said sorry for the many questions, which is totally fine. No worries. I'm just trying to get everybody's question in. All right. Right. I was told that some patients provide you regularly with certificate that tomorrow is insurance beneficiary, enough for immediate dispatch of SST in accidents. Yes, normally, but in general, we would like to validate it at the time of death. And of course, when I say at the time of death, right, most people, if you're not 22 and a motorcyclist or do extreme cave diving or single mountaineering or whatever, you're not going to die in accidents if you're a bit, if I don't know, if you're 35 or 40 or whatever. So in most cases, in that case, you probably would anyway have time to make sure that we know that your insurance is still valid. But other than that, it does make sense to make sure that we know that your insurance is still valid. All right. Any payment options for European citizens through illiquid assets, allowing them retaining control before death with immediate SST dispatch? Probably not. We might be able to come up with some So we have this concept what we call alternative funding methods. So we have our standard funding method that I briefly mentioned initially, like term life insurance, whole life insurance, index life insurance, prepayment, payable on death accounts. And then for all the other stuff, we have what we call alternative funding methods, which can in theory be everything. So we do accept a lot, but you always take the risk if it's one of these alternative funding methodologies, that at the time of death, if you die without advance notice, where you can't make sure that the money actually gets to our account before death, we would need to validate that the money is actually still available. We have we have members with us that are signed up that just said, here are my 3 family members. If I die, call them up. They're going to wire the money immediately. We would strongly recommend against this. We had cases in the past where people have tried to do that, and then the family members suddenly did not remember anything. So that's what I mean. It's up to you in these cases to make sure that the structure that needs to pay that funds or transfer that funds is actually in place. So if there is a structure at that point that can, with a very high degree of certainty, validate that these illiquid assets are still there and the last will was not changed and yada yada yada, right? Then that might work, but we would require a high degree of certainty. So if this is something that you absolutely want to do, and again we would strongly recommend against it, then feel free to reach out to us and we can discuss the details of how and how that work in detail. All right, I think we have answered all questions that are relevant, I think. Of course, we're going to be with you soon again, and next time also on time, and with different topics, of course. Now, going forward, let me quickly just remind you, sign up with us, sign up early. Membership will definitely make work with all the different backup and fallback options that we just discussed. For cryopreservation funding, if money is tight or if money is tight in the future, we'll also try to make work. So if there's a couple of you who have always postponed, who have decided to sign up for cryopreservation, even years ago maybe, and have never found a way of how to actually make it work financially, please reach out. We're happy to work with you, with all of you individually, to find a path how people can sign up, even though the standard pricing might not be feasible. Yes. Thank you so much from my side.
Well, thanks from my side too. And I would just like to ask that we show the consultation link one more time.
Yeah, yes. Perfect. And of course, you can also always just go to our webpage, and all of these links are everywhere on our webpage, or just send us an email at support@tomorrow.bio. And then the team and I and everybody from us is more than happy to help you with that. Yes. But now, without further ado, thank you so much and have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
All right. Good.